The digital clock on my nightstand glowed an unforgiving 3:17 a.m. My eyelids felt gritty, sandpaper rough against my burning eyeballs. I'd been tossing and turning for hours, the relentless hum of the city outside my apartment window doing little to lull me into any semblance of peace. My name, for the purpose of this story, is Evelyn, and this particular night, like far too many before it, felt different, heavier, the kind of oppressive quiet that precedes a storm, even when the forecast promised clear skies. My small one-bedroom apartment, usually a sanctuary from the urban sprawl of downtown Los Angeles, felt suddenly cavernous, its familiar shadows stretching and twisting into unfamiliar forms. I punched my pillow, fluffing it for the 10th time, trying to find that elusive sweet spot between firmness and softness that might trick my brain into sleep. It was useless. My mind raced, replaying snippets of the day, a stressful meeting, an argument with a friend, the lingering scent of burnt coffee from earlier. All mundane anxieties, yet tonight they felt magnified, amplified by the suffocating silence of my bedroom. I rolled onto my back, staring up at the ceiling, its textured surface a landscape of subtle hills and valleys that my restless mind instantly began to animate. A faint scratching sound started, barely perceptible at first, a delicate tap, 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 like tiny fingernails against glass. My breath hitched. I held absolutely still, every muscle tensed, straining to identify the source. It seemed to come from the window, specifically the small sealed pane that looked out onto the alleyway behind my building. A tree branch? A rat? The logical explanations flickered through my mind, each quickly dismissed. There were no trees close enough to my window, and the building was old, but meticulously maintained. Rats were unheard of. The scratching intensified, becoming more deliberate, more insistent. It wasn't random. It was a rhythmic pattern, almost a cadence. Tap, 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 tap. My heart rate, already elevated, began to thrum against my ribs like a trapped bird. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the sound to disappear, telling myself it was just my overactive imagination, a trick of the night. When I opened them again, the scratching had stopped. The sudden, absolute silence was almost worse than the sound itself. It felt like a held breath. I slowly turned my head towards the window, my neck stiff, a prickle of unease crawling up my spine. The blinds were drawn, a heavy, beige barrier against the outside world, but a sliver of streetlight managed to penetrate, casting a faint, pale glow across the room. Nothing. Just the blinds, still and undisturbed. I let out a slow, shaky breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Just my imagination. My tired, stressed-out imagination. I closed my eyes again, trying to reset, to find sleep. The mattress felt oddly cold beneath me, despite the warmth of my duvet. My limbs felt heavy, weighted down, as if encased in lead. A familiar sensation, one that had plagued me on and off for months now. Sleep paralysis. I knew the drill. The brain waking before the body, the terrifying inability to move, the hallucinations. But tonight it felt different, more intense, more real. My eyes snapped open. I hadn't opened them willingly. They were forced open, wide and unblinking, fixed on the ceiling. My entire body was locked down. A lead weight pressed against my chest, making each shallow breath a struggle. My throat was dry, constricted, every attempt to call out, to scream, producing nothing more than a desperate, strangled rasp. Panic, sharp and icy, flared in my chest, blooming into a full-blown inferno of terror. The room was bathed in an even deeper darkness now, the faint streetlight outside seemingly swallowed by an oppressive gloom. The air grew impossibly heavy, thick and cloying, pressing down on me, making my lungs ache. And then I felt it. A presence. Not seen, but felt. A cold, focused weight hovering directly above me, just inches from my face. It wasn't a hallucination, not merely a feeling of dread. It was a tangible pressure, a suffocating closeness that stole my breath and threatened to crush me. My eyes, fixed on the ceiling, strained in the gloom, trying to pierce the oppressive darkness, to make sense of the monstrous form I felt looming over me. There was no distinct shape, no discernible features, just a swirling void of deeper black, a nullity that seemed to absorb all light, all sound, all hope. It radiated an intense, malevolent cold, a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room, but seeped directly into my bones, into the core of my being. Then came the sound. Not a voice, not a whisper, but a low, guttural vibration that seemed to emanate from the very air around me. It wasn't heard with my ears, but felt in my chest, reverberating through my skull, shaking my teeth. It was a frequency of pure dread, a sound designed to unravel the very fabric of sanity. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, desperate drumbeat in the sudden, overwhelming horror. Tears, hot and uncontrollable, streamed from the corners of my eyes, blurring the already indistinct darkness above me. I tried to thrash, to fight, to break free, but my body was a prison. My muscles screamed in protest, but remained unyielding, held captive by an invisible, unbreakable force. My jaw was clenched so tight my teeth ached, every nerve ending screaming in silent agony. The pressure on my chest intensified, a crushing weight that stole my breath, making my vision swim with black spots. I was drowning, suffocating in my own bed, in my own room. The presence seemed to lean closer, its coldness a physical thing, an icy breath against my face, even though I knew there was no breath, no physical form. It was a pure, unadulterated sensation of invasive, malicious proximity. The vibrating sound intensified, resonating deeper within my skull, threatening to split my head open. It felt like a silent scream, a monstrous, unheard shriek of pure malevolence. My gaze, still fixed on the ceiling, suddenly caught a flicker. A faint reddish glow, almost imperceptible, began to emanate from the far corner of my room, near the old mahogany dresser. It was a pulsing light, like a dying ember, barely cutting through the oppressive gloom. My eyes, wide with terror, struggled to focus on it, desperate for any point of reference, any anchor in this sea of horrifying darkness. The pulsating light grew, slowly, agonizingly slowly, revealing not a flame, but a swirling reddish mist, almost like blood-red smoke, coalescing into a faint, indistinct form. It was low to the ground, shapeless, yet undeniably there. It seemed to writhe, to pulse with a malevolent energy, its reddish glow casting dancing, terrifying shadows on the walls. The vibrating sound grew louder, more insistent, now accompanied by a faint, almost subliminal crackling like static electricity. My mind screamed for it to be a dream, a nightmare, anything but this horrifying reality. But the crushing weight, the icy cold, the vibrating dread, it was all too real. The reddish mist began to drift slowly, deliberately towards my bed. Its movement was unnatural, gliding effortlessly through the heavy air, leaving no ripple, no disturbance. It was as if it belonged to a different dimension, merely phasing into ours to torment me. My heart threatened to explode from my chest, each beat a painful, frantic throb. I wanted to avert my gaze, to close my eyes, to simply disappear. But I was forced to watch, a helpless, screaming witness to my own unfolding horror. The form reached the foot of my bed, its reddish glow intensifying, casting a sickly hue over my paralyzed body. It rose slowly, fluidly, taking on a more defined yet still indistinct human-like silhouette. Tall, gaunt. Its head seemed to tilt, as if observing me, studying me with an unseen gaze. I could feel its attention, a burning, invasive scrutiny that felt like a physical violation. The cold radiating from it intensified, a searing chill that penetrated my duvet, my clothes, my skin, straight into my bones. The vibrating hum now seemed to come directly from the figure, its red glow pulsing in time with the sound. It was like a monstrous heartbeat, a slow, deliberate throb of pure malice. I felt a surge of desperate energy, a primal urge to fight, to break free, to run. But my body remained utterly unresponsive, a useless shell. My tears flowed freely now, hot rivulets against my cold cheeks, a pathetic testament to my helplessness. The figure reached out, an elongated, shadowy arm extending towards me. It wasn't a solid limb, more like a tendril of reddish smoke, its edges indistinct, ethereal. It drifted closer, closer, until it was just inches from my face. I could feel the cold radiating from it, a bitter, searing cold that made my skin prickle and my teeth ache. I tried to recoil, to pull away, but my head was locked in place, my eyes forced to watch as the shadowy appendage hovered over me. A faint, almost imperceptible whisper, a dry, raspy sound, seemed to emanate from the figure directly into my mind. It wasn't a language, not words, but a sensation, an emotion, pure, unadulterated malevolence, a predatory hunger. It was a silent communication that bypassed my ears and went straight to the deepest, most vulnerable parts of my psyche. It felt like it was trying to burrow into my mind, to consume my very essence. The reddish tendril moved, slowly, deliberately, towards my forehead. My eyes, wide with terror, tracked its movement, unable to look away. It was going to touch me. It was going to enter me. The thought sent a fresh wave of icy terror through my veins, a desperate primal scream trapped in my throat. I squeezed my eyes shut, a futile attempt to block it out, but my eyelids, stiff and unyielding, refused to obey. The tip of the shadowy tendril paused, hovering millimeters from my skin. The cold emanating from it was intense, a freezing burn that made my skin crawl. I could feel its silent presence, its malevolent intent pressed against my mind. It was exploring, probing, searching. For what, I didn't know. But the hunger I felt, the predatory focus, made my blood run cold. This wasn't just sleep paralysis. This was something else, something utterly terrifying. Then, as suddenly as it had come, it began to recede. The pressure on my chest eased, just a fraction. The reddish glow of the figure at the foot of my bed began to dim, its edges blurring, its form dissolving back into the oppressive gloom. The vibrating hum faded, slowly, gradually, replaced by the mundane sounds of the city, the distant wail of a siren, the faint drone of traffic. The cold began to dissipate, leaving a lingering chill that raised goosebumps on my skin. The paralysis began to break. First, a tingling pins and needles sensation in my fingers and toes. Then, a shudder, a deep, full-body tremor that racked my entire frame. I twitched a finger, then another. My jaw unclenched with a painful pop. I gasped, a real full shuddering breath, the air burning my raw throat. My body was drenched in sweat, my heart hammering like a drum against my ribs. I scrambled upright, pushing myself into a sitting position, my limbs shaky and weak. My eyes darted frantically around the room, searching, desperately searching for any trace of the reddish figure, the oppressive presence. The room was dark but familiar. My nightstand light, still glowing 3:17 a.m., cast a comforting, mundane glow. The dresser was just a dresser, the window just a window. Nothing, no reddish mist, no looming shadow, but the cold lingered. A deep, pervasive chill that had nothing to do with the apartment's temperature, and the memory. Vivid, terrifying, indelible. It wasn't a dream. I knew it wasn't a dream. The fear, The overwhelming sense of violation was too real, too visceral. My body still trembled, a faint, uncontrollable tremor running through my limbs. I stumbled out of bed, my legs wobbly, and flicked on every light in the apartment. The sudden brightness was almost painful, but it was a welcome assault on the oppressive darkness that had just held me captive. I walked into the living room, then the kitchen, then back into the bedroom, checking every corner, every shadow, half expecting to find the reddish mist still lingering, waiting. But there was nothing. Just my apartment, my safe apartment, that no longer felt safe. I brewed a strong cup of coffee, the aroma a comforting anchor in the disorienting aftermath. My hands still shook as I poured the dark liquid, sloshing some over the rim of the mug. I sank onto the sofa, pulling a blanket tightly around me, despite the sudden, overwhelming heat that now radiated from my body. My mind raced, trying to process, to rationalize, to explain. Sleep paralysis, yes. But the intensity, the feeling of malevolent intent, the reddish glowing figure, it felt like something more, something beyond the neurological explanations. I'd read countless articles, watched documentaries, scoured online forums, desperately seeking answers to these recurring nightmares that felt far too real. Every expert explained it as a benign glitch in the sleep cycle, a temporary disconnect between brain and body. But none of them talked about the palpable evil, the suffocating presence, the intelligent observation. The sun finally began to peek over the horizon, painting the sky in soft hues of pink and orange. The first rays of light streamed through my living room window, dispelling the last of the night's shadows. But they did little to dispel the dread that still clung to me, a tenacious, invisible shroud. I knew I wouldn't sleep again tonight. And I know this wasn't over. The memory of that reddish tendril hovering inches from my forehead, the feeling of that invasive, malevolent presence, is burned into my mind forever.